Joining me now is the Center of the American Experiment President, John Hinderaker. John, thanks so much for coming on the U.S. Report. Now, you wrote a great piece on your Paraline blog. I want to get straight into this about the Dirty 51. It sounds like, some sort of Western. But, John, who are the Dirty 51? What does it have to do with Hunter Biden? And who is behind this group?
Well, James, we have to tell this story kind of from the beginning. In the last days of the 2020 presidential election, it came to light that there were documents that demonstrated corruption on the part of Joe Biden, serious corruption involving the Chinese Communist Party and other foreign governments. And these documents came to light because they were on a laptop that was abandoned by Joe's business partner, his son, Hunter. So this was a crisis for the Democratic Party, how to deal with this evidence of corruption that was really undeniable. And so what they did was they suppressed news reporting so that almost no news outlet in the United States reported the contents of these incriminating documents. Now, how did they justify that? They justified it because 51 former intelligence officials from agencies like the CIA co-authored a letter that denounced these documents as Russian disinformation. Now, that was a complete lie, and they knew it was a lie, but it worked. It was enough to give an excuse to the liberal media just to not cover the story, so that the vast majority of voters had no idea that this evidence had come to light. So one question, James, is how do you organize 51 people in such a short time to co-author this letter? And we know that there were certain former Obama administration intelligence officials that were involved in that process. But Congressman Jim Jordan, who is the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, his committee is conducting an investigation. And Jim Jordan has now hinted, more than hinted, in a podcast he appeared on a week or so ago, that they've got evidence that this effort was in fact led and coordinated by the Joe Biden presidential campaign. So if that's true, this is a huge scandal regardless. But if that's true, it's even more of a scandal. Here's this evidence showing Joe Biden's corruption, and it is suppressed in an effort organized by the Joe Biden presidential campaign. Now, let's see. We haven't seen the evidence yet. Let's see what the committee comes up with.
But, John, I mean, this goes to a much bigger question, because you're talking about former intelligence people who would have still had very big ties to the intelligence community. We also saw how many of the people who worked at the social media companies were all former intelligence and all sorts of things like this. I mean, doesn't this prove, and I know we'll talk about Donald Trump and your thoughts about him in a minute, but this does kind of seem to prove what Donald Trump says about a swamp trying to take him down.
Well, it goes back before 2020, James. As you know, in 2016, the intelligence committees, community, the CIA and the FBI were very much in on the fake Steele dossier that was paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign that contained all these lies about Donald Trump. And this went on for years before they were finally debunked. And the intelligence community was in that effort right up to their eyeballs. They have been working against Donald Trump since the day he rode down the escalator at Trump Tower.
Indeed. Now, meanwhile, Donald Trump's rival, Ron DeSantis, he has been fighting his own fights in Florida. He's unveiled another act of retaliation against Disney, and he's threatening to build a new state prison next to the company's Central Florida theme parks. Now, I gotta say, I love his style on this, but a lot of people are saying now that maybe DeSantis is gonna wait another 4 years before running for president. What are your thoughts on this, John?
Well, I hope he doesn't wait. I think DeSantis is the man. I think 2024 is his hour. I think if he runs against Joe Biden, he almost certainly will win. Joe Biden is frankly a pathetic candidate. We all know that. But I do think that Joe Biden would beat Donald Trump. He beat him in 2020. Trump is bogged down. Trump has got so much baggage he's hauling around, multiple legal issues. He's under indictment. He's likely to be indicted in other criminal cases. And whatever you think about those cases, and I think they're certainly mostly bogus, Donald Trump has left behind him a trail of bad judgment. He's done a lot of things to shoot himself in the foot. And I think it's time to move on. I think the idea of, running the guy who lost last time, that's the Adlai Stevenson strategy. That's not the way to go. We've had enough of 80-year-old presidents. I mean, seriously, you show these clips of Joe Biden. Now, Joe was never an intelligent man, but I mean, he's now, he's suffering from advanced dementia. And I think we need a president. These are critical times. We need a president in his prime, not a president in his 80s.
Well, and just on that, I mean, what do you make of the fact that we spoke about this earlier in the show, John, but that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has now launched a campaign against Joe Biden to win the nomination. Now, it's a very long shot bid, but at the same time, it does suggest that not all is well on the Democrat side in terms of, being enthusiastic about Joe 2024.
I think the real question, James, is whether Kennedy Jr. turns out to be a trailblazer. It's a quixotic effort. He is best known as an anti-vaxxer. He's been campaigning against vaccinations, not just the COVID vaccine, but all the mainstream vaccines we've seen for many years. And that has been Robert Kennedy Jr.'s issue. That's what he is associated with. What I think is interesting, James, is to see, will he get any traction at all? Will he start to garner some support? Because if he does, that's when I think we could see other candidates deciding that the doors are open to come in and run against Joe Biden in the Democratic primaries in 2024. Gavin Newsom, we all know, is champing at the bit. He would love to run against Joe Biden. And I think if Robert Kennedy Jr. starts getting even a modest amount of traction, I think that's going to be enough to lure people like Gavin Newsom into the race. And then I think it could get really interesting.
I mean, I just love the idea, John, of Gavin Newsom running for president, because I just think that videos from San Francisco and Los Angeles will be the Republicans' best campaign ads. But glad you also mentioned California, because board members in California's Sunnyvale School District, this is a great story, took a self-assessment for white allies test where they were asked to rate whether or not how they recognize institutional racism and how it permeates societal institutions, including the legal, policing, and justice system, housing, healthcare, education, yada, 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 right down the list. Now, California schools aren't going that great. Why are they? What is going on here, John?
Well, first of all, what you just described, James, is a Maoist struggle session. That's exactly what it is. Pleading guilty to being white, confessing your sins, swearing allegiance to the doctrines of critical race theory. But, this is going on across America. It is unbelievable how institutions have fallen into this grip of this crazy, crazy ideology of critical race theory. And one of the main things driving it is the teachers' unions. The teachers' unions are among the most powerful political forces in the United States, in states like California and many others. And they are the ones that are really driving this radical ideology. And James, that is why all across the United States, we are seeing parents whose kids are in these schools rising up and rebelling and running for their local school boards and trying to take back control over the public schools.
John, it's great that sort of democracy exists in the United States to take control of schools. Would be good if we had some of that in Australia. Thank you so much for joining us.